I remember when I was still a little boy, I would often hear stories about deserted villages. I remember there was a story about a young girl that died. She died while waiting for her boyfriend to return from war. The spirit of the young girl repossessed her dead, rotted body. She refused to be buried by the villagers because she was still waiting for her boyfriend to return. The villagers got scared and they all left the village. Growing up, I loved listening to that story. I thought it was only a story created by the elders to scare us little kids so we won't stay out so late at night. I didn't think that I'll actually get to experience the horror which causes people to abandon their village. Back in the 1950s, my wife and I got married and we lived in a new small Hmong village high up in the mountains of Laos. During that time, there was not a lot of people in our village. The village was quiet and peaceful. I remember one morning, the village chief called everyone to go meet up in front of his house. During our little morning assembly, the village chief told us that he had a dream the night before. In the dream, the spirit guardian of the land warned him to keep the noises down after sunset. The spirit guardian said, "There's evil spirits that rise up at nighttime. We must keep the noise down after sunset to avoid attracting evil spirits to our village." All of the villagers agreed with the chief that we'll get everything done before sunset to avoid making too much noise at night. That became the rule of our new village. It's always nice to be one of the first few families that built a village. You get to pick a good spot to build your house. You get to pick a nice piece of land close by the village to farm. After 4 years, more and more people start moving into our village. As our village grow and expand, we forgot about what the village chief said. As more and more people moved into our village, we were no longer afraid of the dark. Little kids love to play and run around after sunset when it's cooler outside. The elders love to play their bamboo pipe instruments, and they love to gather around to tell stories during sunset. One morning, the village chief called everyone back to his place for an assembly. He reminded everyone about the village rule. He said, "We've been in this village for almost 5 years. This place, this village, have a spirit guardian. The spirit guardian said we should not make so much noise after sunset. I ask that you all keep the noise down after sunset to avoid attracting evil spirits into our village." Most of the villagers did not listen and walked out of the assembly. That day, the villagers continued to let their kids play at sunset until dark. The elders would gather outside to tell stories and play their musical instruments like usual. The next day, the village chief couldn't wake up his youngest daughter. She appeared to have died in her sleep. His daughter was the first death in our village. Some elders in the village blamed the village chief and said to him that the reason his daughter died was because of his big mouth. The chief and his family did a 3-day funeral for his little daughter and buried her by the edge of our village. The people decided to mark that spot as the graveyard of the village. After the funeral, the chief announced that him and his family will be leaving the village. He told the villagers to pick someone to replace him as village chief. After that, him and his family left the village. After the chief and his family left, an elder in the village got very sick. At nighttime, he starts moaning and meowing like a cat. A few days later, he died and was buried in the graveyard next to the chief's daughter's grave. The day after his burial, a kid in our village suddenly got sick and died too. As more and more villagers gotten sick and died, we're starting to notice that there are some strange cats that hangs around the graveyard by the edge of our village. Every day before sunset, we would hear the cats crying and meowing from where the graveyard is. Eventually, the cats start coming to our village. These cats are very strange. They look like regular cats, but instead of having horizontal eyes, their eyes are vertical. When you look straight at these cats, they're usually walking and running around on all four legs like regular cats. But when you see them at the corner of your eyes, they appear to be walking on two legs. At night, if you go outside, these cats appear to be little children with long, messy hairs. As more and more villagers got sick and died, everyone started pointing finger at these cats. The elders in our village believes that these cats are the evil spirits. Every day, someone in our village would get a headache or a stomachache and just suddenly die from it. At first, the villagers did not want to move and leave everything they've built behind. But after everyone lost a loved one, the villagers began to move out one family at a time. Eventually, our village became cold and emptied. My wife and I were actually planning to move out too, but my wife had just gave birth to our son. My wife was still too weak to travel by foot. That was the only reason why we didn't leave. During that time, there was only my little family and another family left in the village. One day I walked over to that family's house because I want to know if they're going to leave the village anytime soon. That family told me that they're planning to leave, but their grandpa is very sick. They're just waiting for their grandpa to pass before leaving the village. Jang is the head of that family. He told me that if I'm not doing anything at sunset, he wanted me to go back to their house around that time. He told me that their grandpa is very sick and just sleeps all day, but his grandpa would wake up around sunset. Jang said he wanted me to see something. That day when the sun begins to set, I walked over to their house. Before knocking on the door, I can hear their grandpa meowing from inside.
Meow. Meow.
I knocked on the door and Jane came out. He told me to listen closely.
Meow. Meow.
When I listened closely, I feel chills all over my body. There was a meowing coming from the direction of the graveyard. Jane's grandpa inside of their house would meow in response to that meow that was coming from the direction of the graveyard. I said to Jane, "Hey, I'm going back to my house before the sun is completely gone. Please come by to let my family know when you guys are leaving. We might want to leave with your family too." Jane told me that he will let me know. On my way back, there were a few cats that were following me around. Every time I turned back to look at them, they would all scatter and run away only to appear out of the corner of each empty house along the way. When I got home, I told my wife about the situation with the other family. That night, my wife and I decided not to have a fire or light any candle inside our house. We don't want the cat or the evil spirits to think that we're home. Most importantly, we don't want them to take our newborn. That night I was in bed but couldn't sleep. Right around midnight, I heard as if there was a group of people whispering to each other outside of our house. Just then our newborn started crying. I got up to light a candle so my wife can feed our baby. Right when I light the candle by our bedside, I can see hundreds of glowing yellow eyes through the little gap and holes of the bamboo walls of our house. I can see some of those yellow eyes moving around outside of our house. Then my wife and I heard as if some of those cats or whatever they are start climbing our house onto the roof. I grabbed my rifle and aimed right at the noise from our roof. I fired a shot. The glowing yellow eyes outside our house scattered all over the place, and then they all disappeared into the dark. I stay up all night guarding and making sure that my family is okay. When the sun rises, I fell asleep. I slept all day until the late afternoon. When I woke up, I asked my wife, "Did Jane stop by today?" My wife said, "No, no one stopped by today." I got up, opened the door, and went outside. I looked around and saw little footprints all around my house. Some of those footprints looked like cats. Some looks like footprints from small children. I came back inside and locked our door. Then I asked my wife how she's feeling. I want to know if she's strong enough to travel by foot. She says she's feeling stronger. I told my wife that we're leaving the village in the morning. That night, as my wife and I was having dinner, our son was sleeping on the guest bed in our living room. Suddenly, our son began to cry loudly. My wife told me to go bring our son to her. I got up and walked over to our son, and I saw that there was a purple hand coming from the outside of our house bamboo wall, trying to grab our son. Whatever or whoever is outside our house managed to squeeze their hand through a tiny gap of the bamboo wall. I quickly grabbed the chopper knife by the fireplace. I ran over to grab our son and pull him away from the purple hand. The hand managed to grab onto the little blanket that was still wrapped around my son. I hit the purple hand a few times with the knife and managed to cut off 2 fingers before the purple hand pulled back to the outside. I handed our baby to my scared wife and grabbed my rifle to go outside, but my wife wouldn't let me go. She did not want me to go outside because if anything were to happen to me, she wouldn't know what to do. As I turned back to look at the hole on the wall by the guest bed, I saw an eye looking at us and blinking. I aimed my rifle at it and fired a shot. Whatever or whoever is out there took off running. I was hoping that the other family would hear the gunshot and come to check on us. But they did not check on us the night before. I don't think they will be checking on us. I don't even know if they're still in the village. Maybe my family is the only one left. That night, we locked ourselves inside the bedroom. The next morning, I packed some food and waters into my bag along with 2 blankets. I grabbed my rifle and my wife carried our son. We walked over to the other family's house. I just want to inform Jang and his family about what happened the night before. When we got to their house, I knocked on their door a few times, but no one answered. I tried to open the door and noticed that it was not locked. I told my wife to wait outside. As I entered their house, I noticed some of their bags and blanket rolls by the corner of their living room. Apparently, Jang and his family had already left, but I wonder why they did not take their belongings. It appears as if they just left in a hurry or something. Then I noticed a strange and unpleasant smell coming from their family's bedroom. I went and opened the door to the bedroom. Inside was the corpse of their grandpa. I noticed that their grandpa's right hand appeared to be bloody and 2 fingers were missing. I quickly closed the bedroom door and walked out of the house. I told my wife that we must go because we're the only family left in the village. It took us almost the whole day to get to the next village by foot. When we got there, Jang and his family wasn't there. We don't know what happened to them.